Hey, I'm going to be doing a multiple part video on wrought iron railing, and more importantly, the poor man or cheap man's way of doing it. I am a builder, and so I need it from time to time, and sometimes I don't necessarily feel like paying $40 a linear foot to be able to have some railing on a porch. I get my metal from a supplier. This is what I get. I get this top rail, and I also get some little half-inch square tubing, and I also get some flat 1-inch flat bar. And you can see that this stuff kind of sits right in here. And of course, you know, this gets welded on there, and it gives you that railing effect. This is a jig that I use, where this half-inch square tubing fits inside of it, and it lets me cut everything to a one set length. You can see all it is a block of wood, some dados cut through it, a little stop to with a relief to allow for metal to collect in there. Also made a jig that you'll see later on in the video. It's actually right down here. Sorry, the shop's a little bit tight, but it consists of just a bunch of blocks that are all lined up parallel to each other, and of course there's some railing right there that we've been working on. So it'll be multi-part. I'll probably assemble it and weld it together for the first part, and the next part I'll put tabs on it, show you how I measure for exact length of where it's going, and then we'll paint it and install it. So this will be part one. Part two will be next. Thanks. So let me explain what I'm doing here. This is my little do-it-yourself square tubing cutting jig. So I need a whole bunch of them that are all the same size. And so I've cut, you kind of look here, along this one piece of MDF, I cut a dado half the size of the square tubing that I need to cut. And then I'll cut the other half on another block of wood, and I'll secure it to a table. So when I slide this piece of square tubing down there, it holds it in place, and then it goes all the way down. So if I get you down here, it's a little metal stop that's got a little bit of a clean out so that you can see that there's a bunch of metal dust in there. So it's got a metal stop, and it allows me to stick them in there and make them all the same length. So let me go on and kind of go through the whole process here. So I need them all the same length, and you can see I've cut a bunch here. So I'll take one that I need cut, I'll take a file, get the burrs off the edge from when I got it from the metal shop. And I'll take it and I'll slide it down all the way to the end where it hits that metal stop. Then I got a little bit of support to hold it while I cut it. And when I cut this thing, I put pressure kind of towards the block, but I'm going straight down. And I also reach in and I grab this clamp to help me hold it in the right spot. So, and I change blades pretty often. So now you can see I've got it pretty perpendicular to this. Then before I get it out of there, take my file, and I'll deburr it. And there we go. Square on both ends. Square there. Square there. You can see that cuts pretty clean. Deburred, so when I weld it, it's going to be good. I'm going to do one more. I do this side before I slide it in so it has a clean stop down at the end and nothing gets in the way. all the way to that metal stop. So most of you have scrap pieces of wood, a couple of clamps. You need some pretty substantial ones because there's a lot of vibration. And you got a reciprocating saw, and you don't need to go buy a van metal cutter that costs $200 to $700, $800 to be able to do this. So I'm doing it for pennies. A little scrap bracket that I had down the end, and some metal blades. I mean, I don't do this very often, so this works for me rather than me spending a whole bunch of money on tools that'll just sit here in the shop. Not that that's a bad thing. Now that I've cut all the 1/2-inch tubing that I'm going to be using for this railing, I actually have a jig that I made up, and it's one that I kind of threw together for this particular railing, but it works. It's about 8 feet long. So what I've got here is I just made blocks, and each one I used a jig to set up each one of these, and I really set them up both together, and then I split it down after I had put them together, so I know that they're exactly parallel with each other. So each one of these spaces, so you can see each one of these spaces has a spot that fits each one of these, and so I pop them in. I make sure that they go all the way to the stop that's right here, and then I know that this edge right here is almost perfect. I mean, the perfection is based on on how perfect each one of these cuts are, which there's a little bit of variation, but you know, I did it by hand with my little jig, so it's not going to be absolutely perfect. Did a little bit of adjustment when I put these together, so I've got this this little beam that I made out of wood and some plywood that I had sitting around the shop. But I've got these bolts in here so that way I could adjust it left or right so that it doesn't, so if it did get skewed out when I pulled it out, that it would stay straight. So here it is, 8 foot long, little jig that I've got made up to be able to make this railing. So I'm going to set it up and put these in and let you watch. Okay, next one is clamping on this top rail. Now, once everything's in the jig, it's a matter of me taking these pipe clamps and clamping them across the top, and then being able to weld it in. So it's not an easy process, but again, this is the cheap man's way of being able to do this when you don't do very many. Don't have to buy a jig, don't have to measure anything off. So it's a little cumbersome. So I'll let you watch. Okay, so this half-inch, this top rail has a channel in the back, and they all fit inside there. Let me see if I can find a piece. So you can see in the bottom there's a half-inch channel that's in there. That half-inch section, you can see it just kind of sits in there. So when it's sitting sideways, it just sits in that groove and it kind of holds it in place. So it allows me to kind of position them and get them to kind of lock in place there, and then I clamp them down. Okay, now they're in there. They're all sitting in that little channel that's right here. They're all straight. They're all perpendicular to the top rail, parallel to each other. So now it's ready to tack them all together on there. Okay, I'm ready to tack weld these things on here, and then I'll tack weld all the way down the whole line, and then I'll come back and I'll actually fill in around them. So I'm using the Harbor Freight Central Electric MIG 170 MIG welder. There were a couple of things that I found that caused some problems with it. Number one, the wire that's with it is bad. It doesn't really, it just doesn't really create the best bead. It'll burn through, or it'll be really spattery. So I ended up with getting the Lincoln flux core wire. That was pretty good. They don't sell a MIG tip or a flux core tip, so this is the tip you can go get a replacement at Home Depot or a welding supply store. So they usually sell the MIG shielding tip, the gas shield tip, so they don't have that one there. So this is the MIG tip, the flux core tip. Another thing is grounding. I add this little piece of aluminum, but it's conductive, so it helps me get a better ground on here. So helps me make better contact with the metal that we're working on. So the other thing is the speed. You'll want to be able to mess with the speed a little bit and test out what pieces you're working on. With this particular one,
this 1/2 inch is much thinner than the rail that you're putting on. So if you try to do a 45, like you want to come in 45 on this thing, you're going to burn a hole in this 1/2 inch because of how thin it is. I mean, you can look at the material that you're working with here, and then the thickness of this here is about, I wouldn't say a third of what that is. Let's see here. So when you're doing that, focus more on your thicker material and get your bead started there and kind of push it into the thinner material. So you're going to be taking your tip and starting more in on this side, and then as you see the metal heat up, you kind of pushing it in there, and it'll take you a while to get used to that. So let me set up, and I'll run a couple, and we'll show you what they look like. They're not the prettiest thing in the world. So if you can see where I'm looking here, so up here, if I was to go in at a 45 this way and then a 15-degree angle back and draw back, I'm going to melt a hole in this material here. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of go in more to the top and let it bleed down into this piece. So let's give it a try here. Got a little high. Okay, there we go. You can kind of see that where I came in from the top, I didn't go all the way, but I'll fill in around it. So you can see that weld bleeds into this thinner material, but it starts in up at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and move down, and I'll just let it run. So what I want to show you is how these welds are, and I am no professional welder, but I mean from the ones that I've done in the when I first started messing around with these things, and what I'm doing now with these welds, you can kind of see. And let me okay. You can see in here. So this is these are my first welds before I start going all the way around them, but you can see that bead, the way that it sits in there, it's rounded right here, and you do see spatter everywhere. But once you get pretty good with your welds, the spatter's not going to be absolutely everywhere, and this will all mostly brush off. So just to give you the idea, so you can kind of look, what I'm doing is I'm taking that stick and I'm putting it more in this area than I am down like this, because then it was just going to blow through this thin material. So what I'm doing is I'm heating up this material, and I'm letting it heat the thinner material at the same time, but from a slightly higher distance. And you'll see that pool form on top and then kind of melt down into this piece. And it takes a little while to be able to get used to looking for that pool of molten metal that's pushing into the other piece. And that, I mean, it took me a while. So right now you can kind of see, once I clean this slag off, they're not bad for a novice. I mean, look at the you really can't get the roll of cords with this thing, but the way that this one's in here, you can see that it's kind of set in there the way I was kind of moving it back and forth to get it to spill over down into the thinner piece of material. So again, I'm no professional. I do this I just do this on the side, but you can see the way they clean up, and they're pretty strong on there. I mean, if I get another bead like that on the other side, then they're gonna stay on there. So now we'll set up and we'll do the other side, and we'll do the two that came off. So once we get the other side on there, I'll have to flip that one over and do that back side, and they'll all stay on there pretty good. So what I'm doing is I flipped it over in this jig, and I mean obviously we got the one that broke, and I'm lining it back up with the slots that were already in here. I'm not really pushing them all the way down in there, but what I'm doing is so that way when I tack this other side on here, I'm still making sure that they're all parallel with each other. So I'm coming in and I'm just making sure where they might move a little bit when I pull them out. And so they're all parallel. So now I'll set up and I'll weld in this side. And since I know where this one's going to be, see, so because it's in that slot, it still fits there. Same with this one. It's already there, so we'll get that on there. Okay, now we're going to do the bottom rail. It's similar process to the top, but everything's already parallel. It's still in the jig, so everything's still parallel here, but we're just going to clamp on this bottom piece. I'm using 1-inch flat stock. Some people could use, a 1-inch flat channel. That would give you a little bit more rigidity on the bottom, but I actually weld on some 1-bys on here. So I'm going to go ahead and clamp these on, and then tack weld these, flip it over, and do the same thing that I just did over here. So this is the second round of welds on the opposite side of the top rail. It's already done, and it might need a little tidying up once I get the whole thing standing up and I'm taking a look at it, and I brush it and wire brush it down. So we'll see. So I'm gonna set it up and let you watch. I'm gonna clamp this in place and then weld it in place. So you notice if you look down this line that the bar kind of goes like this, and you see where it separates down here on this bar and this bar where it kind of dips down. So, and actually maybe a little bit right there. So what I'll do is I'll kind of check each one as I go down. So when I weld these tops on, I'll check the distance, and the truth is I'm kind of eyeballing where they go. I'm just looking down the line, and they can't be. They're not really that much off. Again, this is a homemade jig, so it looks pretty good. When you look down at here, they don't look like they're too far off, but I'll go ahead and tack them on. So I cleaned up this first round on the bottom, and like spots in here, so you can see a hole there. If I can go down here, there's a hole there where it blew through, and then there's something I took a gouge out of that one, and then a hole there, and a hole there, and a hole there. So I'm going to fill those in, and then hit those with a grinder. And really, there's not much slag, so you can see, there's not a lot of slag that's on the bottom of these things. I mean, these actually, they're okay. They're not perfect, but again, not a professional. But if you go and you look at the ones that some of these guys do, look at any of them. You see slag everywhere. You see bad welds. They just pop them together and throw them on there and charge you like $40 to $50 a linear foot. So for the basic ones. I think in the beginning or either the end of this video, I'll go through the pricing that I went through it. I'm even going to include the cost, like the welder and the other parts, so you can look at like what the linear footage is that I'm doing right now, which is about 42 linear feet. I'm doing it for probably a quarter the cost of somebody else doing it, and that's including the welder. Of course, it's a hardware freight welder, but yeah, still working on this one. Okay, so it's welded together. All the bottoms are welded, top's welded, but didn't take really, maybe from the time I was cutting to now, I think it's about 4, and I started at 11 and took actually a 2-hour lunch break, so maybe 3 hours in. But there's one piece that's been welded in, holding up the whole thing. So it's they're pretty good on there. Not the prettiest, but with a little bit of the flappy sanding wheel, they'll clean up. They'll paint pretty good. So I'm going to go next to, I gotta measure it out, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that with some custom, almost like slide rules that I made to be able to get the exact measurement to bring it back here and set it actually on this thing. And then weld on the tabs that go on the end so they can mount. And this one's going in between brick and actually vinyl siding. So I'll show you a trick that I'm doing with that. So next will be cutting to length and then welding tabs on.